Welcome everyone, I'm AngloV the Polish guy, and today I will cover 3 more days of my stay in a C3 wormhole. If you haven't watched them yet, check out the previous episodes on my channel, also linked in the description. So, the first day started out as usual with scanning out the wormhole, that is, up until the point where an additional set of probes appeared on this scan. Deciding that it was a good idea to chase whoever was in the system down, I refit for PvP. After some time I noticed an aster on this scan. I quickly got my combat probes and scanned it down. A little advice for all of you. Rename your ship so that you don't have your character name in it. It gives off a lot of information for someone descanning you, like me in this case. Getting the Astro pinpointed to a relic site, I warped right on top of it. Despite the character being 1 day old, he managed to get out. It isn't a very hard thing to do, seeing as my lock time on frigates is around 30 seconds. Still, I'm as happy with scaring someone off as with killing them. I need peace and quiet, and I can achieve that both ways. I'm thinking about training my alt into interdictors though. Some time of chasing around later, the player informed me of leaving on local. We talked some on private chat, I gave him some advice and that was that. I was left alone for the rest of the day. My first site was a forgotten Frontier Recursive Depot relic site. Just as last time, I had some fun being neuted out. Still, it wasn't that much of an issue with me being able to tank everything passively. I got some advice on counteracting newts that I might look into later, but for now being neuted out is fine for my setup. It only really happens with mostly battleships in the wave, and for those I don't need active modules for better tracking. I should have got rid of the scramming guards earlier though. They are probably my biggest danger in those sites, leaving me more vulnerable than I'm comfortable with. I started counting up the loot and salvage from this point for those of you curious about it. The salvage for this forgotten Frontier Recursive Depot was almost 37 million estimate and 93 million for the blue loot earned in about half an hour including salvage. My next site was an unsecured Frontier Receiver data site. Here the newts aren't that much of an issue, but the remote repairs are more annoying. As much as I can deal with no cap, I still struggle with remote reps in some sites. If you have any advice in that regard, let me know, I would be grateful. I'll bring up an example of my issues later in the video. In the middle of a wave, I had to report a bug with the camera. I won't talk about it much, since it might not be an issue when this video comes out. After around 35 minutes, the total was 34 million in salvage and 75 million in blue loot. After those two sites, I decided to hack the cans with my alt and scout out the low-sec connection. Seeing that it wasn't far from Amar, I decided to drop off my salvage and sell all the blue loot on the way, totaling in a haul of about 400 million. As much as transporting this much loot at once would terrify me even a few months ago, now it doesn't seem like much. Still, I was being careful with how I am flying this ship. Being careless with valuable cargo won't bring me anywhere. When I got my alt back, I finished for the day. As always, starting my next session I scanned whatever new signatures popped up. My first site of the day was an Unescured Frontier database data site. Similarly to other sites, it took about half an hour for 88 million in blue loot and 35 million in salvage. The forgotten Frontier Recursive Depot I did after that went similarly to the one from before, except for the Talocan cruiser that spawned. Initially I didn't notice it and almost didn't bother with hacking at the end of my session. During the salvaging, some probes started appearing on this scan. I bookmarked the wrecks that were left, refit for PvP and went on to hunt down whoever was around. A heron named Relic quickly appeared on this scan. Seriously, try to name your ships something not that descriptive. Getting the ship scanned on a nullsec wormhole, I warped in at 0. Anticipating whoever it was just warping off or being warp stabbed, I didn't get my hopes up. But I got there and got no reaction. It was almost half a minute before I got a lock, but it landed and I got a kill. My first actual genuine kill in this wormhole. I almost got the pod too. I got it locked, but one of my drones missed, so it didn't get the kill before the guy got into the wormhole back to nullsec. I need to get my ult into something that helps me with PvP at some point. Fighting frigates with a battleship really isn't viable. So, after that I got back to my wrecks and salvaged everything. In the rush I didn't count up my loot properly, but it should be similar to the first site I did in this video. My next site was a Fortification Frontier Stronghold anomaly. While doing it, my only annoyance were the scanner probes left by that heron. I dislike having stuff that isn't mine on this scan. The site took around 20 minutes including salvaging, giving me about 7 million in salvage and 41 million in blue loot. My next site was a C4 anomaly, Frontier Barracks. This site I hate for the reps in the last wave. The first wave is fairly easy, the second nudes me out, but the cap manages to regenerate after it. Somewhere during the second wave, the Heron guy finally accepted my conversation invite. We talked a bunch about exploration and other stuff. He's a cool guy from what we talked. Me being me, I had to leave some advice regarding exploration. The last wave of this site spawns quite far away, so initially I was only able to kill the frigates. Still, they aren't much of a threat except for light nuke pressure. After the frigates I had issues on how to approach the rest of the waves. The logic here really is tough to deal with, but with fitting enough damage mods I managed to get one of the rats killed. And from there it only gets easier. At some point I started helping myself a little with ECM. In total it took a bit less than 30 minutes, leaving me with 19 million in salvage and 87 in blue loot. With no other good sites left to run, I went into the next Frontier Barracks anomaly. This one went by way worse. I ran out of missiles at some point, which really didn't help. Of course, my approach to the site wasn't the best either. Like I mentioned before, I will appreciate any advice. Again, scanner probes appeared on this scan. With me repping my drones and salvaging at the time, I really didn't feel like running around chasing whoever it was. In total, the site took 44 minutes, leaving me with the same amount of loot. After the site, I started waiting for whoever was scanning my system down to decloak or something. It took some time, but a buzzard showed up. I didn't really feel like fighting him. When I got my combat probes into this scan range, he disappeared and didn't show up after that. Deciding that I didn't feel like sitting on a pile of loot anymore, I decided to scout out the low-sec connection. I was so deep in low-sec that I didn't even bother trying to get anywhere, so I decided to wait for a better connection. For the last thing of the day, I wanted to hack the sites I left. This is also when I noticed the Talakan cruiser. I never encountered one of those, but from what I read, they are really valuable. I hope that it wasn't difficult to hack, since this character doesn't have any skills. As with the rest of sleeper cans, it was the easiest difficulty to hack. The loot, on the other hand, was quite a lot. Now I had the issue of having too much cargo. The rest of the sites I hacked didn't have anything valuable, and I didn't have any free space for it at this point. As I talked about before, I do these hacks more for the sake of despawning the sites. So, with that, I left for the day. My next day went off as usual with the scanning. I started off with a solar cell anomaly. Overall, it was quite easy, leaving me with a DPS feed most of the time. I didn't have to use my adaptive shield module either. The site took around 23 minutes, leaving me with 15 million in salvage and 52 in blue loot. The next site was another Frontier Barracks anomaly, but since I already showed 2 of them, I won't bore you with this one. I didn't feel like playing much this day, so for the end I wanted to check on my low-sec connection. It ended up not being that deep in low-sec, so I decided to drop off my loot at Rents. Picking up my stuff, it counted up to around 930 million. Quite a lot to transport in a ship worth barely a million. As much as I would want to say that something exciting happened on my way, there really were no issues. No gate camps or anything of the sort. On my way to Rents, I sold the blue loot, making myself around 500 million ISK. The rest got as always contracted to an alt that handles my high-sec business, and that was that. I got back home to the wormhole and logged off. So, those 3 days went by quite fine. I got some PvP encounters and a lot of loot, and I'm happy with that. I'm thinking about expanding my PvP capabilities at this point into getting an interdictor, but I will have to do some research in that regard first. Other than that, if you have any advice on dealing with logirards, let me know. If you want me to cover anything in my videos, let me know in the comments. At this point, I have a few ideas already suggested by you guys, so thanks for that. Subscribe if you want to get notified about the future episode of this series or other of my videos. I'm planning to make a follow-up video on my cheap solo C2 Drake setup. Okay, that's it from me today, see you next time.